what's going on, guys? Kalamazi here. Dragonflight Alpha is hopefully somewhere within 2 to 3 days of coming out, and I thought this would be a cool video to make. So, within the last day or so, Wowhead actually asked all of their Wowhead like Warlock writers, Ironic, Luzi, and Not, to write a wish list of Dragonflight talents for each spec. Now, I actually wrote a list. I just made 3 videos about a month and a half ago. I'll have a link to them somewhere down below in the video description, most likely. Also forget, but they're on the channel regardless. But I thought it'd be really fun to actually go over the article, looking at each spec, their thoughts on how Warlock has been, and what talents they wouldn't mind seeing changed, coming back, or just their general take on what they want Warlock to be heading into Dragonflight. Now, I feel like as far as my videos were concerned, I hit on like a lot of big things that they probably hit on as well, because there's been a pretty big push for certain abilities and talents and just changes to the class for a couple expansions now. So I'm curious to see where the similarities lie, but yeah, so this should be a pretty fun video, hopefully. Now, while there might not be really any gameplay in this video, I do want to actually say, if you're looking for any weak auras, add-ons, or profiles that I might have, a link down below to my Twitch, where they're all available to you guys for free. If you want to swing by and grab them, hang out, or just ask any questions anytime, or maybe watch some Dragonflight Alpha if we do get into the first wave. Feel free to do so. And I also want to give one huge shout out to my patrons. Thank you for many times, guys, for all support on Patreon. Really, truly appreciate it. If you're looking at supporting on Patreon, should be a link up here, as well as down in the video description below. So, with that being said, let's get right into it. And I also had my editor make a pretty cool new screen for, I guess, reading over content and browser sources and things. It's cool. Let me know what you guys think of it in the comment section below. And with that being said, now let's get into it. Alrighty, so here's the new screen, by the way. A bit closer than what you're used to seeing, but at the same time, it gives a lot more info for browser sources and, I guess, new relevant content, and not some random backdrop when it comes to just WoW and me being AFK in Zereth Mortis. I like it, but let me know what you guys think. So, with that being said, the first spec is Affliction, which is written by Ironic, and there's a section talking about dead talents, new talents, old talents, new concepts, and I want to say I have not read any of this except for a little bit of the Demonology section. So, we're going to jump right into this, and I guess just see where it goes. First and foremost, talents that never had a chance of being used need to be cut. I agree. We've harped on this for a long time. Let's see here. So Nightfall, unfortunately, ever since the return of Shadow Bolt as a filler spell, this talent's always been at the mercy of tuning in the first row. This should definitely just be added to the baseline Affliction Warlock kit as a passive, like you used to see back in old days. I don't disagree with that. I think it'd be pretty cool. Maybe an ability you learn while you're leveling up, something along those lines. I wouldn't mind that at all. It is a bit odd if Drain Soul does indeed become like a baseline filler for Affliction again, so you might run into that weird conundrum of like, oh, well, I have Drain Soul, but there's Nightfall here, so that would need to be taken into account. But I agree with that. Nightfall sort of been, as cool as it is, as iconic as it is, it was iconic because it was baseline #1, and I think now that we had an expansion with Nightfall and Shadow Bolt play and stuff, like as cool as it might have been, like in theory, I don't think it worked out. I think a channeled ability like Drain Soul is where you want to be for AF, so I agree. #2 being Vile Taint, worse than PS and single target, and worse than So the Seeds AoE. This talent, well, I mean, not totally, but sort of. This talent never really found its niche in the expansion it was made in. The only reason I could see this included in AF Warlock kit for Dragonflight would be potentially as an upgrade to PS, as this would make Soul Shards cost. This would make the Soul Shard cost a little viable and help keep potentially some more play. The vast majority of the time, yes, it is indeed worse than So the Seeds in heavy AoE. If you're playing a Rapture build in Plus, you get more value out of Vile Taint with like the 2-piece, 4-piece Rapture bonus and all that. Plus, like, Vile Taint sort of a middle ground between PS and So the Seeds. PS costs no shard, it's 1 down application on 1 target, but it pulses on surrounding mobs. Vile Taint costs a shard. It has a 20-second cooldown versus 45, but it applies a dot to every mob that it hits. So that extra dot application on each mob means that your Raptures are hitting harder on each mob that the extra application is on. Now, STS is like your big, just mass AoE spell, and honestly, this is fine. We talked about AF recently with, you know, the conundrum it's in with 2-piece not working with Seed and Vile Taint and PS being good and bad in different scenarios. I agree. I wouldn't mind seeing changes to Vile Taint. I don't know if removing the shard costs would really be where they want to go with it. But either way, I think it's solid. It's not a bad thing to bring up. It definitely needs a little bit of a look, because it seems like a not as good PS, but a not as good so that sort of makes sense. Howl of Terror. This is a PP talent. If for some reason slot it into the regular talent tree. Sure, it's fine. Yeah, there isn't a single PvE scenario. I mean, sure, it's fine. I guess so. That works. Shadow's Embrace, never really an option based on the numbers game, but similar to Nightfall, should just be added to the baseline AF Warlock kit rather than having a talent point slotted in. I could see a scenario, however, with the potential use and new talent trees as a 3F pick. Yeah, I can see that too, for sure. With each successive talent point increasing its damage gain, it would be neat as well if there was a follow-up talent that also gave bonus damage and execute to align with Dragon Soul. Yeah, that'd be cool too. Like Death's Embrace kind of here. Like Death's Embrace, sort of similar-ish to Shadow's Embrace, execute clause on that, or whatever. I agree. Shadow's Embrace was part of our baseline toolkit in 9.0 and things. And then in 9.1, they took Dark Caller as a talent and made that baseline and put Shadow's Embrace on the same row as Haunt, which was a massive nerf to our damage, amongst other things. And, you know, the Dark Caller swap did not make a difference because we had Shadow's Embrace as a baseline ability in addition to having the option of taking Haunt. So you had a big single target, you know, I guess, prio damage profile. I wouldn't mind that either. It does feel like it should be a little more baseline. I agree with this as well. Although SE gameplay, thinking back to 9.0, even with the duration being 16 seconds now, I think it was 10 or 8 back then, can still be a little annoying at times, but I'm a big fan of this as well. I agree. Okay. The 2-piece, these set bonuses are also cool for Warlock. It would be neat to see capstone traits and talent trees. Oh, this is the whenever you yeah, what is this, the 2-piece or the 4-piece? Oh, this is an old 4-piece. I got it. Okay. I thought this was the current tier. It's not. When Agony deals damage, there's an 8% chance to increase the duration of UA by 2 seconds. So this is the one from Antorus, I believe. I think I mentioned this in my video. And is this the Shard Gen one? When you cast a UA or Seed of Corruption, all targets within 60 yards suffer from your Agony. Take 15% increased damage from corruption. So so take okay. This is the Antorus 2-piece, 4-piece. Basically, whenever you cast a UA, which was your old charge bender, you'd have other targets take 15% increased damage from Agony, Corruption, Siphon Life, or Seed. And this is the 2-piece. When Agony deals damage, a small chance to increase the duration of your UA by 2 seconds. So thinking back to Antorus, there were times you stack 5 UAs, pops your opener, and you get insane procs here, and you just chain UA for an insane amount of time. I agree. These are very cool. I wouldn't mind seeing it come back. They're very synergistic with the Affliction playstyle and make a great addition to the overall play of the spec. I mean, they were synergistic with the old playstyle when you had unstable Affliction stacking. Obviously, it could work with Rapture. It sort of reminds me of like the 2-piece we have now. Whenever you Rapture, your Agony and Corruption are extended. That sort of reminds me of like what this would be in the current tier. But at the same time, if we went back to a UA dot-based like AF spec, which I would prefer probably at this point a little bit, I would love to see these around. I agree. These are very, very cool. You could definitely make some decent capstone traits. One change I like to see is also to have the effect work on Seed of Corruption as well. Currently, these bonuses do absolutely nothing rotation-wise for AoE. For AF and AoE could help that a bit. Yeah, sure. That works, I guess. So, and I guess we have Soul Shape here. Okay. This may be a bit greedy. Yeah. But playing with this spell in Shadowlands has filled a large hole in the Warlock toolkit, had for almost all of its existence. I mean, I don't really want to speculate a whole lot on Soul Shape stuff. I don't think thematically Soul Shape really fits Warlock. I don't think it really fits many classes. Maybe like Druid can make sense if they didn't get Soul Shape. It'd be fine, but I don't think it's very realistic. So, yeah, I mostly I agree with. This is pretty cool to see. I don't really care about Howl, Soul Shapes, whatever. SE being baseline would be nice. Getting rid of Nightfall and Bile Taint does need a little bit of a boost as far as like damage and things is concerned, or just overall utility, right? Old talents, new concepts. These are all encapsulated under one concept. In Legion beforehand, Affliction's playstyle was that of an uptime spec, as you were rewarded for high dot uptime and high filler uptime on top of that, like Drain Soul with Malefic Grasp. This will require good usage of instant cast while moving while maximizing time spent standing still. The playstyle of Affliction drastically changed when Dark Lair was introduced in BFA and was doubled down on with the introduction of Rapture as a Shard Spender in Shadowlands. Nowadays, the damage a Warlock would do during cooldowns would easily be a large majority of the damage to do through your encounters. I don't understand the wording on this. Nowadays, the damage a Warlock will do during cooldowns. Oh, sure. So most of your damage is in a cooldown window. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, it was the same way in BFA, though, when we didn't have Rapture. You had, like, Dark Lair, Dot Extensions, and Death Bolt, too. But yeah, and most classes like that now currently in WoW, which is a bit awkward, but I think it's what it is, right? I agree. I mean, talking about shifting back to dot damage and seeing Return of Dragon Soul, I agree with this mostly. I'd like to see UA become a Shard Spender again, possibly. Like, think back to BFA. if UA was a shard spender, like I guess it was, but if Seed of Corruption, mainly STS, so the seeds, was in the format it's in now, that damage profile and that toolkit would have felt so much different, so much better. Instead of having to spread 5 UAs on AoE and trying to dot and laying things up, you could have your UA be your main shard spender, have So be your big AoE spell. You can even find the balance of like, okay, casting Seed in certain scenarios versus spreading through UAs depending on prio mobs. Like, it'd be really cool. I think the actual toolkit and the damage profile is there. It just sort of needs to be found by Blizzard. But yeah, I agree. Some pretty interesting ideas from the AF side of things. All right, so getting into Demonology, Not wrote a lot of stuff here, which is cool to see. I'm going to skim over most of it, but hit on every point that he brought up. And yeah, it looks like a lot of it is sort of what I thought about as well, which is pretty sick. So, starting off with dead talents here. Number 1, Bombers. This was used for a very brief period of time during Legion, but it's never taken since then, or been taken since then. It's a neat idea for a talent, but the cost of 2 shards. The fact that it's targeted and on a half-minute cooldown means your tanks better have awareness of a hawk, nothing by the area effect. Sure. It has a 0% representation on Warcraft logs. That's sort of wild, even with like Dreadlash and FTS, like Big Dog build being good with your 2-piece, 4-piece. Like, that's pretty wild. I would assume some played it. It's a fun talent. It's a fun one, but it does seem a bit awkward at times. I mean, you have, especially with like Tyrant being 1 minute and Wilfred's being 1 minute, or giving you a 1 minute Tyrant, you have that big demonic strength damage profile every minute, or you have just that passive Dreadlash cleave with your dogs. And yeah, Bioscourge Bomber sort of has been left, I guess, fallen by the wayside. I sort of shifted to the back burner, and it probably could use a bit of a look, I would say. Power Siphon. Yeah, you do have the Demon Bolt build. Imps over the time will do more damage than 2 Demon Bolts, especially in the current patch. We are swimming in Demonic Core procs and Soul Shards, as there's never time. We're truly starved and would rather take damage away from Demonic Tyrant. Yeah, I mean, it's played like a little bit, I think a little bit in the actual PS build. We can actually look it up here, let me see. I think it's played a tiny bit in the actual like big Demon Bolt build. I could be wrong too, because let's be honest, nobody plays this build at this point. I think it is. If we're gonna look, we look on Skullx probably and try and find this here. But I've seen a mix of Demonic Calling and Power Siphon. So it's possible. Let's see here. Where's the highest in there for Lord? We gotta go a ways, boys, because even though this build sims high, it hasn't really actually taken off in any real relevant way. We got, there's, no, he's just playing a different legendary. Good Lord, 13 fairies. I don't know what he's doing, but it ain't right. All right, let's see. We are on, is there a Necro Lord in here? We're on rank 400. I can just sort by Covenant, can't I? Let's do that. Necro Lord. Yeah, there's a decent bit of Power Siphon play here, but there's also a good bit of Demonic Calling playtime. And I mean, personally, if I was like in a similar scenario where Demonic Calling is very similar to Power Siphon, I would just play Demonic Calling. I wouldn't bother with PS, too much micromanagement and things. So it's close. I agree though. PS came out, I believe, in BFA, and it looked like thematically really cool, but just never really ever panned out. And it was a bit unfortunate. So we have Doom. It's a relic of old and likely kept here as a memento to the past when Doom was actually relevant. Interestingly enough, Doom was a curse at the very, very start of Shadowlands. It was a curse with weakness, tongues, and recklessness. I don't think exhaustion was around. They removed recklessness and removed Doom, and they removed Curse of Doom and made it just Doom. It made it a talent, and yeah, it's Doom is not really played in any relevant setting. It should, I mean, thematically, like if Doom was buffed, and I feel like damage-wise it was your best option, or on a row where it was with less competitive talents as far as the most toolkit's concerned, like I think it could be used, but without having that kind of like those changes implemented, it's probably just destined to fail. So, Soul Conduit, they'll use in modern times, albeit extremely rare. There have been some moments where the talent was overpowered in the past. Yeah, it has been. I believe it was a 20% chance to refund shards in BFA or Legion, I think. It's played a little bit right now in the Grim Inquisitor's build, and obviously, like, you know, a little bit here when it comes, like, the Necrolord Demon Bolt build. But if you go to the actual build, as much as I love Necrolord stuff, guys, if you go to the real build, yeah, there's no Soul Conduit really anywhere. Even if you're playing Grim Inquisitors, like, it's better, but it's not by, like, a large margin, because Grim is just not as good as Wilfred. So I think Soul Conduit could sort of stay. I don't think it needs to be changed or removed or anything. Maybe buffed to a certain extent, but if it's on a row with, like, with Grimoire Felguard and you're playing a 1-minute Tyrant build, it sort of makes sense that Grimoire is just the stronger option overall. Inner Demons, I love Inner Demons. It's so cool, but it's never been good. This talent has a ton of flavor and really makes you feel like you're a master demonologist. Yeah, exactly, but it's not good. And I think that's partially due to just the interactions of decon and things as well, because the mana consumption is so strong, your entire spec is built around this mini tyrant setup, mini ramp, and as while Inner Demons is cool thematically, it is not as good as other options on that row. Sack Souls, this could be a baseline ability, I feel like, or make it an insane amount. They have to buff it by a crazy amount. They could buff this talent and make it 8% additional damage per demon, and it would still be worse than the obviously premier talent in demonic consumption. Exactly. Having a row of like Decon, Sack Souls, and Nether Portal, which is right here, it's not even close. Like Decon, probably out of almost any talent in the game, like even looking past Demo Lock, Decon is in a world of its own. It's so strong. Your entire spec and build is based around this talent. Like, the talents you take in the previous rows are impacted because of this talent. Without this talent, Demonology plays very differently. Nether Portal play, Sack Souls play, sort of similar. You're casting some hands and some dogs, but very, very different. So I agree. Sack Souls, as cool as it sort of is thematically, and it does see play in certain PvP spots, I think. And maybe with the Demon Bolt build, but honestly, once again, that build's just not really where you want to be. Nether Portal. This is my favorite Demonology talent. I love this thing. I got some rank 1s at Old Deer with it, I think. That was a million years ago. It's bad, though. It's very bad. There were promises made in patch 9.1 to address underperforming talents. The changes Warlock got was a half-minute duration, or I guess cooldown reduction to Nether Portal, which made 0 difference. It is very bad. It needs realistic. What does he even say? Let's see. It again got a ton of Master Demonology flavor, but so little substance. Extremely clunky to play, altering your spend phase every 3 minutes. Basically, this talent to me needs to be like a minute and a half CD. Like, it needs to line up with your Tyrant. Like minute and a half, maybe like 2 minutes roughly, but a minute and a half is great. You can even cut the duration of the portal from like 15 to like 10, but having it be 2.5 or 3 is very awkward. And also, it's just, even if you compare like the raw damage of Nether Portal to demonic consumption, Decon's just better. And Decon's a minute talent in a sense, because your Tyrant's a minute with Wilfred's. But Nether Portal, no, it's not even close. It's a Decon world, and these two are just living in it, unfortunately. So, Dragonflight, just get rid of Decon. New talents, Demon Wrath. Yes, I mentioned this in my video. Demon Wrath was awesome. Back in Legion, it gave you a spell. Demon's pretty mobile, right? But Demon Wrath gave you a spell you can cast in the move to build shards. Even in AoE at times, I think like there's a large target. Like, there's a big number you hit where at a certain point you cast Demon Wrath for shard gen and raw damage. It was really, really good. It was fun. Thematically, it felt like an actual demo ability. I'd love to see it come back. Back in Legion, we had Demon Wrath, which gave us a % chance per tick coming from AoE Ranger Demons. Yep, to generate a Soul Shard. The damage it did was insignificant, but the shard generation it proved was a real kicker. Yep, exactly. On the move. I think I cast it a lot on, I think, Tichondrius in Nighthold, right, like 7-8 years ago, which is wild. It was a great ability, iconic, fun. Would love seeing it come back. The Expendables. I mentioned this in my video. This is like I love this talent. It's great. This is another Legion ability in the Expendables. I think could be a neat addition to Demonology's toolkit. What I thought for this was you can make it like, you could, I guess, theoretically make it like a 1, 2, 3 point kind of talent, right? Where it gets an extra % or whatever based on how many times, I guess how many points you put into it. It was iconic. It's cool. When your wild imps expire or die, your other demons are inspired and gain 1% additional damage, stacking up to 3 times. Now, I guess to be fair, it sounds pretty mandatory if it's like a 1, 2, 3 rank kind of thing. But even at a baseline like 1 out of 1 rank, this would be pretty cool. I wouldn't mind seeing it back at all. It's iconic. When I think of Demonology from Legion, I like the Expendables was one thing that came to mind. Like, I want this back. This is pretty cool. I agree with this. TKC, this is like what Decon should be. Thalkael drains 8% of the life from your demon servants and unleashes a blast of shadow damage at your current target equal to the life he stole. You can get rid of demonic consumption and just put Thalkael's consumption in the talent tree. And as long as it's tuned right, I'm happy. You can rename it because Thalkael's not around anymore. Doesn't matter, but like, this feels like more of a Demonology spell than like demonic consumption does in a sense. You're like the master summoner of sorts. You should be able to siphon life from your pets and do it damage-wise to a target or whatever, right? It was cool. It was impactful. This is your main Legion artifact ability for Demonology. And unlike Destro, which had portals, or even Aff, which had Reap Souls, this one feels like it could really come back and still be a talent in Dragonflight with actual relevance, and not like a bit of a reach, like if Destro got Dimensional Rifts again. I'd be down for that, but TKC feels like it really could be a legitimate thing in Dragonflight. I agree, for sure. Carnivorous Stalkers is synergistic for sure. This is the content we have now. It works very well with FTS and Dreadlash. I would just hope they put this on a different row than FTS and Dreadlash. This build's very fun. It's the big dogs build, right? The one we're playing now. FTS, Dreadlash, Carnivorous giving you another chance to chomp again. To reapply FTS, the Dreadlash damage amp when they re-chomp more damage. It's good. It's just solid, right? Or I guess AoE Dreadbite, however you want to put it. But I would like to see Carnivorous come back too. That'd be I think a pretty solid change, and it wouldn't even be bad as like a middle ground, like smaller capstone kind of talent. Grim Inquisitor's Dread Calling is pretty similar to the Carnivorous FTS Dreadlash build. It's synergistic. I think it makes sense. Yeah, it'd be good. It'd be nice to have this whole build around. And it does feel like a talent you could put in the tree, which, you know, even like making it like a 2-point talent where it's like, you know, it increases by 2%, then 4%, depending on the number of charge you spend, right? I could see that. Horror Nightmare's been a legendary over the course of SL. It's been there. It's good wherever it's fine. It works wherever you play it, unlike IP, but it's just been very mediocre and subpar. It does feel like it could be sort of an earlier, like, capstone kind of talent where it's cool. Sure, it's a filler ability. That sounds cool, but it doesn't really make much of a difference because when you take it, you're just used to the playstyle. I'd be down for it. I think I put it in my video as well, but I wouldn't be surprised if you see Force is just not a part of any kind of talent tree, just due to how honestly sort of bland and boring that it is. But we'll see. Wilfrid's. So we'll talk about Born of Blood. Born of Blood is what makes the spec work. It makes it feel so much more fluent at this point, right? Finally, there's one other conduit I think that can be taken from Shadowlands and put forth as a talent, and it's Born of Blood. Born of Blood makes Demonology feel so much smoother, crisp, clean, efficient, having those random Demon Bolt procs you can use in between, you know, Dreadstalker bolts and all that. We might have a lot of procs now due to like the insane eye level on Born of Blood and our 2-piece, sorry. But even before then, Born of Blood helped smooth Demonology out so much. It's going to feel like whenever we lost Baleful Invocation or thought we were going to lose it going into Shadowlands, it'll feel like that, I think, going into a new expansion without Born of Blood. It's that impactful. So the Wilfrid's part, I am down for. I think Wilfrid's... So here's my thing. With CDR effects, like Wilfrid's, where it reduces your Tyrant cooldown by 0.6 seconds or whatever it is per shard spent, I feel like if they were going to bring an ability like this or put it in the tree, you'd see something more like Dark Caller. I think it was Dark Caller for Affliction in 9.0. You'd see a talent that just says, hey, if you take this cooldown's a minute, or this cooldown is X instead of Y. It's not, you know, an exact Wilfrid's effect. Because there's been times where they've had to nerf Wilfrid's effects. I mean, look at like Shadowlands Alpha. They nerfed the crap out of Destro, or they nerfed the crap out of Wilfrid's for Destro, I think, and Demo as well, because of how strong the CDR was. And look at CDR now with Destro and Plus due to the 4-piece. Your Infernals, even with Destro, are like less than a minute at times, or a minute and a half. It's pretty wild. I'd be surprised almost if we don't see some kind of like timer reduction cooldown if that version of Demonology stays around. But I don't think it'll be Wilfrid's. I think it'll be like a baseline, like passive Dark Caller. Your Tyrant's a minute instead of a minute and a half now. But at the same time, the relevancy of that depends on if Demonic Consumption stays around too, because Decon with a minute Tyrant is pretty wild. Not then goes on to talk a little bit about like new demons and things, and wanting something new besides baseline dogs and imps and a Belguard every once in a while. And I agree. I definitely wouldn't mind. I think we should see some new demons for Demonology. We don't need like permanent massive pit lords. I'd be down for that. But something. It's been the same imps, dogs, Tyrant, and Grimoire, and a Vile Fiend if you have it, for a very long time. Even looking at how Nether Portal is right now, you can pull some wild demons out of that thing. Like some birds, some Shivara, some big dogs and stuff. Other big dogs compared to Dreadstalkers. Why not add some of those to the baseline Demonology talent tree, or toolkit, or summons, or whatever? That'd be pretty cool. But honestly, as far as this is concerned, a lot of this is like what I echoed in my video as well. It sounds great. a lot of these abilities, like, iconic, like, Legion ones. And Demo doesn't have as rich of a history as, like, Destro or Aft does, in a sense, right? Destro's been the same for a very long time. Aft's gotten some changes, but everybody still wants Soul Swap, which wasn't mentioned. Soul Swap, dot damage being relevant. So it has that rich history. Demo doesn't necessarily, but even these abilities here, like, these are ones that are solid, man. TKC, even having Brim be baseline, like Born of Blood, whether it's a new ability or an old one, like Demon Wrath, Expendables, TKC. There's a skeleton of a really fun Demonology build here. They just have to find it. Alrighty, so moving on to Destro, let's take a look. Lucy mentions with various different talent trees being published for different classes and specs for now. I thought I'd write down a list. Okay, sure. Got it. So, dead talents. Instructions for a very long time, but using the same set of talents for many tiers in a row. Yeah, pretty much. There's been a little variance, but not a whole lot. Some Roaring Blaze play, some Rate of Chaos play, but I mean, even like for the past few expansions, Destro's been the same. It's been the same Immolate, Incinerate, Conflagrate, Chaos Bolt, Rain of Fire Spender spec, which is not a bad thing. I think if a spec stays in a similar form for multiple expansions, it sort of says the spec is like in a decent spot, like toolkit wise, but obviously Destro's been either very good at certain points or very bad at certain points, which is not where we live in right now. So, number one, Soulfire, way too long of a cast, but actually performs relatively close to alternate talents. I haven't simmed Soulfire in a long time. It might, couldn't tell you, but I mean, just not as good. Interestingly enough, this used to actually give you an instant cast of Incinerate whenever you cast your Soulfire, instead of applying Immolate during Alpha of Shadowlands. And that made the talent more exciting and interesting, because a good bit of the time, you're not really relying on Soulfire to apply Immolate. Maybe like, besides a precast for boss damage, which once again, not the best option. But having that instant cast Immolate made the spell a lot better and more enticing. With the Immolate effect being added to it though, not really where you want to be. Number two, Fire and Brimstone. In its current state has never seen any play. Yep, it's bad. Hope it returns as a baseline toggle spell. I've been asking this for a very long time. So, Fire and Brimstone used to be a baseline spell, part of the baseline Destro kit, that you could toggle on and off in AoE and single target. I believe it would like reduce the damage of all of your Incinerates and Conflagrates, whatever it would cleave. It used to cleave Chaos Bolt as well too if you had the Charred Mains talent. Instead of like reducing the surrounding damage, but it was very strong because it gave you a good AoE profile if you wanted it on the fly, and also gave a good single target profile if you didn't want to use it, right? It was just there as an option. Shard Gen was big with FMB, and the same goes for just raw damage and AoE. It was very solid, but when it became a talent, it got this huge like damage nerf, I guess, modifier on it, and just been really subpar since then. Other options like Inferno or Cataclysm, which is in the same row as Fire and Brimstone, are leagues ahead of it. Going baseline and becoming toggleable again is a huge reach, I think, but one I would love to see. I totally agree with this take. Grimoire of Sacrifice used to be the go-to when it came to the row of different Grimoires, which is true. We had a row of Grimoires back in, I think, Legion. It was like 3 different Grimoire talents, which is pretty cool. When Shadowlands launched, they decided to leave it as the only remaining Grimoire. The effect of Grimoire Sacrifice was also changed significantly in Legion, and went from being a buff to your damage to a random proc of extra damage. I think it was... I thought it might have been changed like in BFA, not Legion. I can't remember exactly, but yeah, it used to be either a baseline buff to your damage or like a flat intellect increase, which meant like, number one, if it was your best option, it was your best option in single target. But in like 2 target and 3 target and AoE based settings, that baseline damage increase or that baseline intellect increase scaled more comparatively to a talent that was just a permanent single target increase. So you had options, but this one does not. It does not scale in AoE. It is horrendous in single target. It has been a complete dumpster fire for talent for like 5 years now, and ignored 100%. Grimoire Sacrifice is like probably top 3 talents I want to see just deleted or changed and put in a form that works. Mages have Lonely Throne or Frozen Winter or whatever with no pet to do more damage. Hunters have Lone Wolf to do more damage if they have no pet out. Why can't we have a good one? It's bad. Please fix it. 100%. This is not just for Demo, for Destro. This is for AF as well. Both versions of SAC are just terrible. Terrible, terrible, terrible. Channel Demon Fire, really cool talent, just so hard to compete with Dark Soul and Soul Conduit. Yeah, they both have... Yeah, I feel like Demon Fire could be almost on a different row, like the one before the final row, just based on like how relevant it is in certain settings. It's fun. It's solid. It was played a little bit in 9.0 with Roaring Blaze. But yeah, unfortunately, just the raw power of Dark Soul and Soul Conduit, I've outclassed it in most settings. I wouldn't mind seeing this buff to just move to a different row at some point. It seems like it would be a cool like mid-tier capstone kind of talent, but yeah, just doesn't match up with Dark Soul and Soul Conduit as far as raw damage is concerned. Talents, yes, I mean, Shadowburn used to be a baseline ability and an alternative Soul Shard spender to Chaos Bolt on single target, even in Cleave too, right? I like the current version of Shadowburn, but hope it becomes a baseline spell 100%. Shadowburn, Fire and Brimstone, both baseline, would be incredible and go a very long way in making Destro's toolkit, the baseline one, much more just in-depth, involved, not in an overcomplicated way. It would feel better, because right now you have a very simple builder, spender, maintain your dot kind of damage profile, right? I agree wholeheartedly. Cataclysm, I'd love seeing this baseline as well. It kind of feels like an ability that should be baseline for Destro, right? It's an ability that you put in the ground like Rain of Fire or other, ground-based effects, and when it explodes, it applies your dot to multiple mobs. Have you tried to apply Immolate to like 4 targets in heavy AoE when everyone else is just blasting? You're going Immolate, 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 Immolate. I mean, the answer is you just don't really do it. You just ignore Immolate and AoE as a Destro lock. And as far as that being your like only real dot and like as far as how Destro's toolkit works, it feels like it should be relevant, but it's not. But if you have Kata as a talent or a baseline option, it then does indeed become relevant. So Kata being baseline, 100%, I agree. Cinders. This is one of the effects that smooths out Destro's playstyle the most. It does, I agree. This is the Nighthold 2-piece, 2-piece, maybe 4-piece, but the current version is in game now too. It's legendary, right? It adds more mobility, it makes you generate significantly more backdraft stacks, yeah, and just more shard gen and just more overall fluidity. I agree. Cinders could be one of the N-tier capstone traits, like how Convoke is for Druid, or N-tier capstone traits are for like other specs that come out. I could certainly see Cinders being one of those options. It's solid. Cinders and Madness, I think, are both on the same 2-piece, 4-piece in, I think it was Nighthold, and they are both pretty solid. As you can see, they're both good legendaries, even in today's current state. When it comes to Scouring Tithe and Languishing Soul Detritus, I don't agree. I don't like Scouring Tithe. I don't really like the Scouring Tithe Kyrian I don't want to call it LSD. Languishing Soul Detritus gameplay with Havoc. I don't really enjoy the playstyle. I do get what he's saying, though. He talks about, on death effects and Havoc bonuses and being able to, like, game that. Look at Rygalon. Look at other bosses where Kyrian is very good, where things are dying, as are dying in quick succession on multiple fights, so you can get Havoc value. It's a good idea. I don't think, like, Scouring Tithe, if he's referring to that, exactly totally, like, fits the Destro playstyle. It's sort of like a Kyrian Covenant kind of ability thing. But I get what he's saying. This could easily be made into some other ability where it has, like, the Scouring Tithe, Shard Refund, or Dot Refresh kind of amp with Languishing Soul Detritus built into it. So there's that. Magistrate Restraints is one of the cooler, more iconic, like, legendaries that came out in Legion. It wasn't played a whole lot. It's funny, I feel like Magistrate Restraints sort of caught on as being one of the cooler legendaries after Legion almost. Partially due to the fact that if you play it in Time Walking and it procs, it's the old Chaos Bolt animation. But it's cool. Like he says, it did make Destro an absolute machine on 2-target cleave. It did. Proc off Havoc. It was just solid. It was fun. And it would have, I guess it did have some situational value depending on the fight and things. Big cleave fight, Restraints could very well be, an option or a talent or whatever you want to call it in that setting. Now, as far as old abilities and talents go, Charred Remains, I mentioned this in my video. Charred Remains playstyle was a lot of fun. A passive talent that made your Incinerate and Conflagrate deal 60% less damage, but generate 200% more soul shards. This made the old toggle version of FMB. Yeah, we talked about this earlier. This also made FMB affect Chaos Bolt, which is wild. This is one of the most... I'm not even reading what he's saying, but like, this is one of the most fun versions of Destro we've had in a very, very long time. It was a thing in WoD. And whether, FMB is toggleable or baseline or affects Chaos Bolt, Charred Remains playstyle was still very, very fun. It sort of feels a bit like what Madness 4-piece feels like now, with Expedient being mixed in into one big just dumped Chaos Bolt kind of spec. It's super cool, it's fun, it's exciting, and if you like big bolts, dude, Charred Remains was the playstyle you wanted to have. Wreak Havoc was one of those abilities that is also, I think it's pretty iconic, even though it's not talked about as much as like Charred Remains and others. It basically made your Havoc permanent, which he goes on to talk about here. And he also mentions that it made tuning Destro at that point in time in single target tough, Because if Destro was good in a single target at that point, if it was just utterly insane in 2-target Havoc based cleave, right? Now, there probably is like, a way to, mitigate that. Just like modify the actual value of like the damage it puts out, like 60, make it 40 or 30. But tuning around that, I feel like often is not the most accurate and missed at times. Havoc's been buffed and changed and nerfed a million times due to that. So while it was really cool and really iconic, think back on some of the recent like permanent 2-target cleave based fights and think of Destro having a permanent Havoc on those. You can see where it might get pretty wild. Iconic, cool, would love to have it back, but I don't know how realistic it is. If it would come back, it'd be an N tier capstone talent on like a big AoE cleave based row for Destro. We'll see where it goes, possibly. And finally, Decimating Bolt here. Having an execute type ability that plays well in the progression rating is something I will always hope to see. I really like the feel and playstyle of Decimating Bolt being a damage source in itself, but also buffing your Incinerate. Yeah, I agree. I feel like out of Scouring Tithe, Decimating Bolt's Knife A thing and Benthir thing, Decimating Bolt probably feels the most like most realistic to get as an ability from the Covenant if one's going to make it over. It feels sort of like Warlocky and thematic for Destro, Demo, and Aff. And I mean, I don't know, Necrolord's actually okay for all of them, right? Depending on what it buffs and things. We'll see where it goes. But I agree. Char domains, dude, please bring this playstyle back. Baseline Cataclysm, baseline Shadowburn, toggle Fire and Brimstone, and please, dear Lord, Blizzard, address Grimoire Sacrifice for Destro and Aff. It's just so bad. Please. Thanks for watching, guys. Now, I hope this video actually didn't run too long. I'm assuming it's probably going to be about 35-ish minutes. I guess we'll find out when I edit it. But either way, I thought it'd be pretty cool. We'll talk about some of the points they brought up and see if they lined up with what I thought would be some cool changes, new talents, and all that in my videos like a month and a half ago. And surprisingly, like, there's a lot of overlap there, which is really cool to see. I'm glad that I'm glad I wasn't too far off. But I do think a lot of the abilities have been like just general things people have asked for a while. Not mentioned meta very briefly, and also mentioned like as cool as it would be, it's probably not going to happen. And well, there's that. And then I think Zyro didn't mention Soul Swap. That's been a thing for a long time. I wouldn't mind seeing some version of Soul Swap back, but that's also a bit of a reach. I think Soul Swap was a bit of a, it was awesome, iconic, cool, but maybe a bit of a headache as far as like tuning and things went, but I don't know. We'll see where it goes. So let me know what you guys think of the video in the comment section below, and if you guys have any like reactions or takes or anything, drop them down there. Questions, I'll drop them down there. I'll be sure to get back to you. I also want to give one huge shout out to my patrons again. Thank you a million times, guys, for all support on Patreon. Really appreciate it. If you're looking at supporting on Patreon, should be a link up here as well as down in the video description below. While you're down there, be sure to smash the like and sub buttons. It helps out a ton. Thanks again for watching, guys, and I'll catch you all again soon on stream. Maybe in Dragonflight. Hopefully. Peace.